We have 8 commissioners with us today. There are 12 commissioners total. 4 are unable to join. 7 makes a quorum, so we are above quorum. And I just wanted to start off with a couple of changes in the order, given folks' time constraints. First of all, we're going to be joined by Mr. Kamal Essaheb from the governor's office, and he has a time sensitivity. So after we ask for an approval of the minutes, we're going to have Dr. Rai introduce him, and he's going to make his presentation. And then we'll move to the state plan with our vice chair, Agu, and deputy secretary. And then the other change to the batting order is because we are so close on a quorum, we want to make sure that we have enough commissioners for votes that we need. And so the vote that we're going to be taking is currently at the end of the agenda on some financial aid COMAR regulations. So I've already spoken with Dr. Dow about moving her towards the end and having Jeff Newman and Al Dorset go before Dr. Dow because Dr. Bands, Commissioner Bands, needs to leave a little early, and we just didn't want to run up against a time crunch. So those are the changes to it's all the same substance, just in a slightly different order. And let's go ahead and get started. Call to order. Chair and secretary remarks. My remarks will be brief. I did want to start off by wishing, on behalf of all of the commissioners, wishing a very happy Administrative Professionals Day to Ms. Debbie Ng, who keeps us straight and sailing and on track. Thank you, Ms. Ng, for everything. And thank you to all the other administrative professionals at the agency as well. We don't get to work with you as closely. But I know there's a lot of really important behind the scenes work going on at MPAC every day. So thank you to Ms. Ng and all of the administrative professionals. I really don't have any other pressing remarks. We have a very full agenda. There's a lot going on at the agency, at the state level, and at the federal level with respect to our state plan. We're going to get a federal policy update. You can see on the agenda, we're going to have some presentations. Derek Coley is going to give us an update about what happened in Annapolis this past session. Session just ended a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Dow is going to give us an update on the blueprint and particularly relevant sections for MPAC. And then Jeff Newman and Al Dorset, who actually are going to go before Dr. Dow, are going to ask us to approve some regulations and also update us on the budget actions, the budget that was just passed by the legislature. So I will turn it over to Secretary Rai.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. Thank you all commissioners, and good morning to everyone, and welcome to April 2025 meeting of the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I also want to thank Ms. Debbie Ng and all employees at Maryland Higher Education Commission for their dedication, hard work, professionalism, and commitment to the work that we do every day to support the students across the state. April is also a very important month. It is higher education community recognizes April as Community College Month. This year's theme is Best Decision Ever. We know that education is the passport for social and economic mobility. This has been true for the last several decades and will be for years to come. All our community colleges, all our institutions of higher education provide many of our students with a jump start to their professional journeys, making attending one of our schools in the state of Maryland the best decision ever for them. So I want to thank all our students who are seeking post-secondary education at institutions across our state. Spring also means that we have reached the point in the academic year where our institutions are planning for commencement. Commencement season is a time where students, their families, friends, and other cheerleaders celebrate what they have accomplished during their higher education career. We are very, very excited to acknowledge them for their drive and perseverance during this time as well. Still, we cannot ignore the reports of international students nationwide having their visas canceled and having to endure other unnecessary burdens. Our hearts go out to them as they navigate these tough times. Later this week, I'll speak on the importance of having world knowledge and being a global citizen during the Maryland International Education Consortium International Education Day. In Maryland, we have welcomed 22,000 students just this year, international students across all our institutions of higher education. We thank them for being in Maryland. We thank them for choosing one of the institutions of higher education in our great state. They're always welcome to stay and pursue their higher education objectives in our state. Times like these allow Maryland Higher Education Commission to re-emphasize its commitment to ensuring our students have the best resources, programming, and opportunities to achieve the highest level of success. Thank you to all our faculty and staff at our colleges and universities for their support and focus on all students. It is because of their hard work and dedication that our students are able to walk across the stage and into their futures prepared to take on the world. As Chair Moss mentioned, today's meeting, you will hear updates on the state budget, Maryland legislative session, blueprint for Maryland's future, cybersecurity regulations, and a state plan for higher education. Additionally, there will be a presentation from Mr. Holston from the Boston Consulting Group on quantum computing, a signature industry for the state of Maryland. In fact, our Governor Moore referred to Maryland as the capital of quantum earlier this year. We want to continue to play a leading role in this industry, and we look forward to hearing from Mr. Holston later during our meeting. As you know, as you are well aware, the state of Maryland, like many other states, is experiencing budget challenges. But in spite of historic budget restrictions and cuts across the board, we are very thankful to Governor Moore for his strong support for higher education. As you are aware, we are in the process of developing a new state plan for higher education to guide our future efforts. The existing plan spans from 2020 to 2025. As we approach its conclusion, we are embracing this exciting opportunity to shape what comes next. This moment allows us to collaborate closely with our institutions and key stakeholders to design a forward-looking plan, one that meets the evolving needs of our residents and businesses while strengthening our state's economic competitiveness and preparing our workforce for the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead. You will hear more updates later in this meeting from Vice Chair Agu and Deputy Secretary Levanis. Despite the economic challenges and other prospective barriers across the higher education landscape, the Maryland Higher Education Commission continues to embark on work that is relevant and necessary to keep our institutions of higher education among the best. We appreciate our commissioners for their continued guidance and strong support in our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rai. Next on our agenda would be public comments, but I'm told by Ms. Ng that we don't have any. So we will move on to commission meeting minutes from March 26th, 2025. I hope my fellow commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes for the March 26th meeting.
Thank you,
I
Commissioner.
second.
Thank you, Commissioner Tabor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? All right, the minutes are approved. As I mentioned at the top, we're going to slightly tweak the order, and we're going to come back to the state plan and the presentation by our Vice Chair and Deputy Secretary and move directly to our federal policy update, because we are lucky to be joined by our colleague from Governor Moore's office, Kamal Essaheb, and Dr. Rai is going to introduce him.
So again, thank you, Chair Mott. Very, very happy to introduce Kamal, who has recently joined Governor's Office as Senior Policy Advisor on Immigration and Related Affairs. Federal policy update, we are bringing every 2 weeks institutions and leaders from higher education and talking about the challenges that are coming through these executive orders and continuous changes in different operations of higher education. This last couple of weeks, visa cancellations have been a serious topic, and we will hear from Kamal what he's hearing, how Maryland is impacted. Just to set the stage for this conversation, I want to share some data. Maryland has 22,000 international students. If you look at this as a campus of 22,000 students, it will be probably third largest or fourth largest campus within our state. And total revenue that comes from international students is more than $900 million. So for so many reasons, but also this business and revenue and enrollment purposes, international students are very critical for our institutions. So I'm going to pass it to Deputy Secretary Livanis and also to Kamal to give us an update.
Thanks so much, Secretary Rai. I appreciate you providing that context and reminding us of the importance of international students, particularly during this time. Why don't I go ahead and turn it over to Director Esaheb if he's with us. I know that he is constrained by time given how busy he is with his role as our Director of Federal Relations and Senior Advisor to the Governor, Director of Immigration here in Maryland. I know he is also double booked today, so I'm not sure if Kamal, you're able to come on screen. If not, I'm happy to provide the initial update. Really grateful that you're here with us today.
Can you hear me and see me?
We can.
Okay,
I'm ready.
great. Well, thank you for that introduction, Secretary Rai, Deputy Secretary Livanis. I'll hit on three things on the immigration in the immigration world that I think might be of particular relevance to the higher education community, and then happy to take any questions from you all. The first one is the student visa cancellations that Secretary Rai mentioned. Now we know that the number of visas that have been canceled of international students in recent weeks is getting into the thousands, and these are cancellations are unprecedented in part because of the scale, but also because my understanding is that they've been made without explanation. So it's really unclear in any particular case why the action is being taken. What is being reported and what is being revealed by litigation is that in some cases the individuals affected had made some statements, public statements, or have taken part in protests, or have had minor infractions, traffic infractions. That's what's been reported. It's not really clear in any given instance why action against an individual was taken. The numbers are in the dozens in Maryland, affecting I think at least 3 or 4 institutions in the state of Maryland. We now have dozens of lawsuits principally filed by the students themselves who are affected, seeking some combination of restoration of their status so that they can continue enrolling, or seeking to prevent the government from arresting them or deporting them from the country. I should also say that it is also unclear how many of these visa cancellations have additionally led, or how many of these individuals have additionally been affected by enforcement action, i.e. detention or deportation. of the lawsuits that have been filed, we now are seeing some actions by judges, temporary restraining orders, either preventing, the detention or deportation of affected individuals, or restoring, at least in one case, sort of blocking the change of status for an individual. So this is a rapidly evolving landscape, certainly on the litigation side, but experts have warned that there could be significant implications for the competitiveness of our colleges and universities to attract and recruit international students, particularly in certain sectors. So that's one piece I wanted to talk about. The second piece I wanted to talk about is our General Assembly wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, and one of the bills that it enacted is HB 1222, which, among other things, would designate public education institutions as quote unquote sensitive locations, which would have some implications for what they would how they would handle a visit to campus or to a facility by an individual seeking to conduct immigration enforcement. And so the next step there is the Attorney General's office would develop guidance that would be directed at affected institutions. These would be, could be educational institutions, healthcare institutions, places that provide shelter, and then, such entities that happen to be units of state and local government would have to adopt the policy by, I believe, October 1st of 2025. So, there's quite a bit to be done on the implementation side before, the end units would have to put in place a policy. But I just want to flag that legislation as one that could have a bearing on this constituency. The last thing I want to talk about was an announcement made yesterday by the Department of Homeland Security about a revamp of the SAVE system. Now, the SAVE system is essentially a database run by the federal government that allows for the verification of immigration status, including when individuals are seeking certain benefits, including federal financial aid. And it is unclear what the actual change to the system will be. The press release spoke of how there will be continuous updates to the system and how the system now will integrate data from different sources, news sources, additional sources of data across the federal government and elsewhere. But I think that's something to keep in mind. It's unclear. We are not aware of any upcoming trainings for SAVE system users that have been offered just yet, but that is something that folks in the higher education community should be aware of, as it may require some retraining of staff who are involved in administering financial aid. So maybe I'll stop there and happy to take questions from the group.
Thank you, sir. Really informative updates. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
I just had a quick question on the SAVE system. If someone, so the idea is that if you're a non-citizen and you're applying for some kind of financial aid, you would have, so from what I'm reading is like if you have to verify your immigration status. If you're undocumented of some sorts, you would have to acknowledge that in the registry. Is that correct?
So the system only applies to people seeking certain benefits, and I think the relevant one here is federal financial aid. So presumably someone who's not eligible because of status or other reason for federal financial aid would not apply for it. But this is an existing system. The system is not new. What I flagged in my update is that there will be a revamp. He just announced a revamp to the system that potentially could include different inputs or could potentially lead to different outputs once an institution seeks to verify someone's status. But we don't know. We don't know because beyond the press release, not much has been said.
So if somebody applies for the MIFSA, the Maryland version of FAFSA, and they're applying for some kind of financial aid, that would be for the state of Maryland. Would that be, they wouldn't have to go through this SAVE?
And Commissioner Serrano, thanks for your question. I just want to recognize, it seems like our Executive Director of Financial Aid, Al Dorset, has raised his hand, and it might be in order to respond to your question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Al. I saw you come up on screen.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Levanis. I appreciate that. Just to give a little bit of clarification, the SAGE system is a mailbox that the states and institutions use to pass communication back between the federal government and our systems. When a student does the FAFSA uses several systems to identify students' eligibility based on whether they're a resident, a eligible non-resident, as well as other things there. The SAGE system is separate from an individual doing the MISFA or the MHEC-1 app because that is directly through Maryland. So as Mr. Esselhab had indicated, the federal government is making some changes on it. They will provide us with more information on what those changes are for users. But to give a quick example, when we import FAFSAs into our MDCAP system, we actually retrieve those FAFSAs from the SAGE mailbox and then import that FAFSA data into MDCAP. So it's mainly federal aid and records and information attached to students doing federal financial aid.
Thanks, Al. Commissioner Agu?
Director, thanks so much for the time today. One question I had was just, again, you talked about the lawsuits that have been filed mainly by students themselves. Is there any effort or possibility of institutions or maybe even state government itself stepping in on behalf of students who've had visas revoked in many ways for things that are not even made clear? Is there any effort around that, or is there any possibility around that?
Yeah, I know that there are some institutions who are considering it and thinking about it. As of now, and maybe the last 24 hours, they might have been lawsuits filed, but I know that there is. I don't know what has been considered ultimately decided, but I think that is something that at least some institutions are thinking about.
Yeah, I will add that two institutions are doing their best. Some law students are providing law clinics, those kinds of things. But your point is well taken, Commissioner. These students need help. They do not have resources to get legal help. We know cases where some students who are going to graduate in a couple of weeks, and they were asked to leave after so much investment in their higher education, hard-earned money from back home, and now they are not able to finish. The other, I think, long-term impact is our ability to recruit these students. International student enrollment will be significantly impacted. Other countries are already in the places and recruiting students, so that is an issue for us. And a lot of international students, as you know, are in the STEM fields. To just give you an example, computer science and electrical engineering are very important for what's happening in our economy. 80% of the graduate students in computer science and electrical engineering are international students. Other countries are already looking at them and trying to recruit them and provide them, a path to citizenship and other things in much faster way. The other I will add is since these days we are looking at revenue and money, we should always look at that. The amount of revenue that comes from international students, or if you think of selling higher education, right? In that language, I never like to use that. So we sell more higher education than what we sell coal, energy, gas, all combined. Think about that. And if you think of this tariff, right? These international students have been paying that tariff already because they often pay 100%, 200% more than the tuition, regular tuition of all institutions. So from every sense, it looks like that this is an issue that needs to be addressed because it's great for higher education, it's great for our economic competitiveness, and we are getting the best talent from around the world. And if you look at all our companies, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Zoom, many of these CEOs have come as international students, and then they have provided us this opportunity. A lot of our faculty, our staff, our deans, and others among our institutions of higher education, they have also come as international students. Just for full disclosure, I came as an international student too many years ago. But some of our staff and faculty are also in this situation who are not citizens. They are also, we talked about the students, but they are also having some of these issues. So thank you for bringing this up.
If I can just add, one more piece I neglected to mention. Actually, our Attorney General Brown, filed an amicus brief, I think just last week, and I'll put it in the chat, alongside 18 other attorneys general in one of the lawsuits. So that's just one example of the involvement of state institutions in one of these lawsuits. So I put the press release in the chat if folks can access it.
Thank you. Commissioner Serrano, I'll get to you in just 1 minute. One thing I just wanted to add, just putting on my lawyer hat very briefly, my sense is the students are getting a lot in their lawsuits, and that a reason that the students are bringing suit is because they are in the best position legally. They have legal standing. They're the ones who are most affected by the revocation. So just something to keep in mind. But I do think that there's a lot of support behind the students, but the students are actually the ones putting their names on the documents and filing the lawsuits. Commissioner Serrano.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So one, it's kind of a tangential issue, but like the alien registration requirement. My understanding that the deadline that they gave was April 11th. Where are we with that? Are we providing any guidance to students that they have to register for this? From my understanding, that if you don't register for this kind of whatever this registry that they have for DHS, that you would there's penalties that come with it. And so I think and I haven't seen anything that's being held up in the court, so I think it is still going on that we still required folks to do that. And then the second question is, I don't know if it's happened in Maryland yet, but like the kind of the demarcations of people who have TPS or temporary protective status as deceased. Basically, the Social Security Administration has been informed to basically demarcate anybody who has some kind of temporary protective status that's just non-existent. So what happens then? So if somebody is a student and is a TPS, recipient, now they don't exist anymore. Where do we go there?
Yeah, so on the registry requirement, that did take effect starting on April 11th. And so then that gave individuals some period of time to complete their registration. Failure to register is a crime, and also it also kicks, the regulation that includes the registration requirement also has a so-called carry your papers requirement, which would impose criminal penalties on all non-citizens who fail to have their registration papers, their proof of registration with them at all time. I believe I read that last week was the first prosecution of individuals, I think it's in Arizona, of for failure to register. But there's I can't speak to every institution and what guidance they are providing. I think one of the challenges in with respect to the registration requirement, it's not very straightforward to assess who has to register and who doesn't, right? So it's not as simple as undocumented people have to register, documented people don't, which is what you would kind of maybe assume. There's a pretty long list of individuals based on how they entered the US, what benefits they applied for, whether they've been put in deportation proceedings that are considered registered already, right? And aren't subject to this additional registration requirement. And so it is a pretty individualized, assessment in terms of, do I have to register? Do I not to? On the SSA inputting of some non-citizens into the death master file, I have seen the reporting on that. I don't know. I have not seen any statements from the administration, at least that I'm aware of, statements of policy or process that reveals who they're doing this to and how they're deciding that. The implications are significant for individuals who are affected. You could see things like their credit cards being pulled back, their mortgages being, mortgage applications being denied, all sorts of problems, applying for work, the I-9 process. It is, a pretty unprecedented step for people who are alive to be intentionally put into that database, which is really meant to protect creditors, right? And protects the system against unauthorized seeking of credit or collection of benefits. So I think the ramifications there, I think, as you're suggesting, are significant, but we just don't know enough beyond some of the reporting. We don't have any statements or policy from the administration to know exactly who would be impacted.
Is there any protocol that we're developing for if it happens, or do we just wait and see?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, without knowing more, it's hard to know what can be done, just to be frank. But it is something that we're watching closely, as it could have an impact on a wide range of folks. I am not aware of any litigation being brought in that context. There may be, there may be some thinking on a potential challenge there.
Shamat, you are muted.
Sorry about that. I was just saying thank you very much, Director Assaheb. We really appreciate your time, and we know you're busy. Any other questions from our fellow commissioners? All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me.
So now going back to our earlier agenda item, an update on our Maryland State Plan from our Vice Chair Agu and our Deputy Secretary Livanis.
Thank you, Chair Motz. And if it's okay, might I be able to just present a few other federal policy updates?
Oh, sure.
Into the
Absolutely.
statement?
Yes,
Great,
yes.
thank you. And I will use the opportunity to segue into the state plan presentation. So I have the slides ready, Vice Chair Agu. And again, thank you to Director Assaheb for joining us this morning. I did just want to provide some additional context as to how the state is organizing. As a reminder, I provided some of this last time we met, but it might just be helpful to repeat because so much changes. So the governor's office is convening folks from across the state every Friday. So Members like myself connect every Friday morning and we talk about what is happening within our respective agencies, and this way we attempt to coordinate our responses. So to your question, Vice Chair Agu, this is kind of how we determine whether or not a state level response, one of the ways that we determine whether or not a state level response is needed. There are also different working groups depending on the policy area. So we have a working group on civil rights, there's another working group on immigration. So there is quite a bit of attention that is being paid at the state level in order to be responsive to what's changing in the federal government. We also then, as a result of all of these changes, did brief all of the presidents across the state at the end of March. And after that phone call, we have been coordinating with the segments, and we have a phone call every 2 weeks on Tuesday afternoons where we have representation from the community colleges, the USM, as well as MICUA, and we've had 2 phone calls so far, and it's been incredibly helpful to get a sense of what is happening on the ground, what are our institutions, how are they being affected by these changes in federal policy, but then also to coordinate a response if that ever becomes a requirement. So I do want to thank our institutional partners for their willingness to join us every 2 weeks, because it helps us get a sense of what is happening on the ground. And there are a number of, we have 2 presidents from each of the segments along with representations from the segments at the higher level as well. So I do want to thank those folks because they give us a lot of really important information around how our students and our employees are being impacted by changes in federal policy. I also wanted to highlight that earlier this week, the Department of Education announced that they will restarting student loan collections on May 5th. As many of you may remember, this was paused during the pandemic on March 2020. So we haven't seen collections take place for the past 5 years. And so we anticipate that will begin at the beginning of May. Also wanted to just share some positive news. Yesterday, Governor Moore signed a bill that was passed by the General Assembly earlier this session around supporting our federal workers. As many of you know, at the end of February, he announced a 5-pronged approach to make sure that we in Maryland were responding to these changes and supporting those folks who are losing their jobs, not only in DC, but in the DMV area. One of the things that MHEC was charged to do was partner with MSDE and other state agencies to create a pathway for federal workers who are interested in entering into the teaching profession as a second career. You might have remembered that presentation from last meeting. Since then, we've launched a $1 million RFP with the Teacher Quality and Diversity Grant Program. We expect to see applications from both public and independent institutions come through. Those applications are due at the end of this week. There has been great interest across the system in institutions either creating or expanding their alternative certification programs, which really allows us to acknowledge the subject matter expertise of these federal workers and then put them on an accelerated path into the classroom. This work will also help inform some of our efforts in changing the landscape so that we can better support teachers right now who are conditionally licensed and get them on a track to professional licensure as well. So we're using this moment to really kind of create a ripple effect and partner with state agencies like MSDE, the Governor's Office of Children, and the Department of Labor. And many of you know that that work also helps support what we're doing with Blueprint. So later on in the presentation, you'll hear from Dr. Dow about some of our work in this space, but obviously as we work to diversify the teacher workforce, this is helping us advance those efforts. So just wanted to end with some positive news, really excited that we'll be able to support our federal workers, and our institutions of higher education are really stepping up and meeting this moment. Thanks, Chair Motz. I think at this point, if there aren't any questions, but I'm happy to pause to see if there are any before transitioning to the state plan.
Thank you for that update, and thank you to our institutions of higher education for really stepping up. I know we have many representatives on the call today. It's a challenging time, and it's an all hands on deck, and we really appreciate everybody's support. All right, I think you've got the next agenda item as well with our vice chair. Vice Chair Agu, would you want to kick off the state plan conversation?
Absolutely. So, Deputy Secretary, do you have the slides, or do you need me to share them? Whatever. Perfect. I would not have done that as well. So we'll just do a quick update on where we are with the state plan, and also just leave any room for thoughts or questions. If we go to the next slide. Just again, to give a sense, as was said by the secretary, we are about due to do an update to our state higher education plan. And again, really remember, this is kind of our unifying vision for post-secondary education in the state of Maryland. And again, we're fortunate that we have the authority and the mandate to coordinate across all of these different segments of higher education: public, private, career and technical, regional higher education institutions, community colleges. And by law, we have a couple of mandates that we have, and you all have heard them, but I just want to say them really clearly. One, to look at the present and future needs for post-secondary education and research within the state. That's one. Secondly, to do an assessment of the present and future capabilities of our institutions and our segments. Where do we stand as a higher education infrastructure body? And then lastly, to identify what are going to be our long range and our short range objectives that will be accomplished with the plan. And in some ways, what I say is, how do we know we actually got to success? That is what we are mandated to do. And we have been in that process really since many of us came on as commissioners, and really being led by our secretary, as well as the amazing staff, who I do want to shout out, from our deputy secretary to Dr. Dow, to many folks that many of us have not totally met yet, but who I've gotten to meet and who are doing yeoman's work making this happen. But one thing to say is, for us, we've made kind of North Stars for us equity. We've made North Stars for us completion. We've made North Stars for us economic development. That's going to be what we're shooting at. We know in terms of the GPS, we know the destination that we're getting to, a more equitable, more economically competitive state with more completion. And the question now is, how do we get there? And so that's really what the actual nuts and bolts of the plan are there to help us get to. So if we go to the next slide. I didn't realize that transition. Let's talk about external engagement. So if you want to think about this on almost a two-track process, our goal is to be able to have sometime in probably Q4 of this year a draft plan that we can begin to put in front of stakeholders, as well as really begin to socialize with stakeholders, as well as the General Assembly. As we get to that process, we believe this cannot be written in a black box. This has to be written in conversation and moving in partnership with many stakeholders across the state. So if you look at the left box, we are kicked off a number of stakeholder engagements around the state, deep, in-depth conversations that can be honest and frank about what we are thinking so far about the plan, and also get feedback on that from various institutions. So we are, just to give a sense of the broad swath of this, we are meeting with every segment of higher education. So from MICUA to MAC to USM, we are hoping to schedule conversations with our regional, with our private career technical schools, also with some of the RHAC representation, but not just there. We'll be meeting, I believe, actually on Monday or Tuesday with the Maryland Business Roundtable, as well as a number of other industry groups to talk about what the needs of business are. We'll be sitting down with groups like the ABLE Foundation to represent philanthropy. We are trying to, we are looking at conversations with the Maryland Association of Counties to get responses from the county level. We expect to talk to our legislative leadership, but the goal is to involve all of Maryland and all those stakeholders in the creation of this plan. And then on the right side, we will have starting probably getting in Q3, a steering committee, which will be a small group that'll sit alongside with us as we produce internally this plan that will represent, while everyone may not be in that room, all the stakeholders will be represented in some way, shape, or form. And so look out for more updates on that as we get toward the fall. We are going to be doing two things that will seem to be in tension. One, we are going to get as much feedback as possible from as many stakeholders as possible, because we believe that's how you get to the best plan. But we are also not producing a lowest common denominator plan. There will be things in this plan that will be ambitious, that will be visionary, but that'll also be hard. And that will require a lot of all of us. When I say all of us, I mean truly the royal us in terms of the state of Maryland, because that's what our students are going to require. Our goal is to get to a plan that gives students what they need, and however hard it is for us or new it is for us, that's what Maryland is going to kind of wrap itself around and be committed to. And that comes not just from us, but from the governor himself. And so we believe that getting all the feedback is what's going to get us to that plan. But what's not going to come out is something that's lowest common denominator, something that's going to get us to what we think we need to get to for our economy and really for our students. So let me just stop there for a second. See if there are any questions, and then I believe, Chair Motz, next on our agenda we have Mr. Holston. So but let me just stop here if there are any thoughts or questions based on what was just shared. I know I went quickly, but I know we have a lot on the agenda, so I just want to be economical with time. Okay, if there are no questions, and again, this will not be the last bite at the apple, what I want to do is, again, this is tied to the plan. We've begun to have a series of experts come and speak to us from around the country. We in Maryland do a lot of things well, but we also are not, we are confident, but we are not arrogant. So we know that there are things that we can learn, and there are things that can definitely inform this plan and also just our daily efforts as we pursue it. And so we were fortunate to have Matt Siegelman from the Burning Glass Institute last week to talk about, give us a macroeconomic look and see how that's tying to skills and what higher education does. And we are fortunate today to have Mr. JB Holstead from the state of Colorado with us. JB is familiar with us here in the DMV. He was the former CEO of the Greater Washington Partnership, which many of you are familiar with many of our biggest companies from Baltimore all the way down to Richmond, and did yeoman's work there, particularly around skills. It is really hard to do the whole man's bio. It's really difficult. I would take him a lot of things, but I will say a couple things. One, entrepreneur and founder, named, I believe, 2010 Technology Entrepreneur of the Year in the state of Colorado, with a successful exited company. Academic, so former dean of the Richard School of Engineering in the Colorado system, and then also just like civic, indispensable man here in the DMV, but also in Colorado, and really that's what brings him here today. JB has been deeply involved in Colorado's efforts to become a leader in quantum. One can argue that they may be our top competitor in terms of claiming that title of capital of quantum, and he has been gracious enough to come and talk to us about the state's efforts, which are coordinated across the state, and in many ways, I think a way that we can learn from. And I've asked him to talk about those efforts broadly in terms of making Colorado a leader in the quantum industry, and particularly talk about how higher education has been involved to help accelerate that. Because that's going to be one of our goals. How do we use higher education to push forward some of these lighthouse industries that the governor was in Asia talking about here at home? And so, JB, feel free to come on. Hopefully this all works. And I believe you also have some slides that you'll need to share.
Right. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you, and I hope y'all can hear me. It's I won't tell you how great the weather is out here in Denver today, but it was snowing a couple of days ago, so it just goes to show. I did have a chance to listen in, Dr. Ray. I was very sympathetic to your comments as a former dean of engineering and computer science. I know under Trump 1, I know how critical international students are to America's competitiveness in that category. And I think in general, relative to quantum, I'm more than happy to share what we've learned out here, because I do think we're at a period where we either all stand together or we fall apart. So I am delighted to have this chance to share with you what we've learned here. I do have some slides. We're going to see whether this works. I'm going to zip through them incredibly quickly. Here we go. And do let me know if you can see that. Oh, that's great. Okay, well, yep. Step one is accomplished. Let me now try to move to slideshow format. There we go, great. Y'all set with that?
We don't quite see it yet, but to be honest, if you just need to proceed with these slides as they are, I think we can probably see. If you want to zoom in slightly, I think that may help us. But feel free to not go into slideshow.
Yeah. I think slideshow is not going to work, so I will try to do it this way, and I will speak loudly since the font's small. I know that's always how these things work. But let me go through these very quickly. I suspect there are going to be a ton of questions. We may not have time for those. I'm happy to make myself available either individually or as a group if helpful after this. Let me move on here. Hopefully you all are seeing that transition. Is that working? No.
No.
Well,
No,
gosh.
can you stop sharing? Hi, thank you again for joining. If you stop sharing and share again, it might give you the option to show in full presentation mode.
Okay. It's not like I was a technology dean or entrepreneur or anything like that, right, folks?
Oh,
okay.
The Google Suite is very unique.
That's it is not you, it is us. I guarantee you.
Perfect. We've seen the slide change
Yep.
now in this case.
Okay, great. Well, we'll at least get one slide in. We may get no further, but we'll at least get one slide in. I'm going to cover a few things today, and again, we can go through more of these in more detail if we have time. Key lessons learned, quantum industry specific lessons, university roles, business roles, and then a little bit of a summary. I've used BCG's slide format here because one of the messages I wanted to convey is the importance that and the role that consultants can play. We've worked with all of them out here, as we did with the Greater Washington Partnership. As it happens, BCG was a primary partner in the effort out here. So one of my recommendations to folks as you think about building these innovation ecosystems is lean on your friends from those fields, particularly on a low or pro bono basis. Let me move on from that, see if we're, there we go. Ooh, it worked. Scary. Very high level lessons learned. I've worked with BCG in particular on developing innovation ecosystems in a variety of places around the country. I won't go through all of these, but I think that I am going to try to hit on a number of these. Events can serve as a forcing function. We'll talk about that in the context of tech hubs. I think as we move forward, we have to think about what is that forcing function. I think your governor's leadership with respect to quantum is an important element of that. We had the benefit of the Department of Commerce Tech Hub program, and there have been others. Multi-party coalitions matter. The role of the governor and legislature is non-trivial. Regional approaches are great, but they come with challenges. Ours is a regional approach, and when the coalitions are built, they really need to be built to endure. A lot of lessons learned in building innovation ecosystems around the country. I think relative to Commissioner Agu's question about higher ed, the second point here is probably the most relevant. Differentiated R&D leadership and areas of focus are really critical. So one of the things that you'll hear me say is thinking about where in the value chain Maryland wants to compete, and which of your higher ed institutions are going to play what role in that value chain is going to be critical to think through as you develop the quantum ecosystem. And again, there's a lot here that I won't cover because I know we're a little bit short on time. Events serve as a forcing function. Two pieces of data that were relevant from my own experience. The Greater Washington Partnership really formed out of the region's effort to go after the Olympics and then to pursue the Amazon HQ2 bid. That was a way to coalesce a lot of different interest groups around a specific objective that could be quantified. And similarly with Elevate Quantum, when I came back from my time in DC, I talked to our governor and said, look, there are all these wonderful federal programs that are emerging. Let's be thoughtful about which ones Colorado has the best chance to compete for. And that became a driver. The opportunity to go after federal funding became a real driver for coalescing a lot of interest around a very specific objective. So I think being thoughtful about what that is, what's that North Star, what's going to drive folks over the long haul relative to this objective is important. We spent a lot of time when we went after the tech hubs effort here in Colorado trying to specify the state's comparative advantage. Probably Colorado will appreciate the fact that this is so small you can't read it, but it did talk through how we took the Department of Commerce's 10 national security technology priorities specified in the Tech Hubs program and really tried to detail where Colorado had comparative advantage. The reason we did that is because we had folks from all over the state coming in and saying, we should be a tech hub in every one of these 10 areas. And we needed some data-driven mechanism to be able to say to folks, look, that's great, but this is actually where we can compete. And these are the reasons why. And even if you step it down to a sector like quantum, it's important to do that kind of analysis as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. But again, if you're trying to get a large coalition together, it's very important to get everybody together around data that indicates where the state has real comparative advantage. Otherwise, everyone will tend to try to go after everything. The government and political leadership, critical drivers, they've been absolutely vital out here. It's hard to go past a day when Governor Polis doesn't issue a press release about Colorado and quantum. Partly that's in response to Chicago issuing 2 per day, but it's also effective to keep the broad coalition focused on the notion that this matters. We happen to have benefited from the fact that the governors for the state, the last few governors, have all been very aligned around the innovation economy, and that's become a pretty apolitical issue. So our governor's term limited up in 2026. The two leading contenders to succeed him have already talked explicitly about quantum as an opportunity for the state. So that kind of continuity across and the apolitical nature of that continuity have been very critical to maintaining the strength of the coalition out here in Colorado. The commitments needed to be more than just press releases. Colorado has, if any of you folks are on the legislative side of things there, the one thing I would say is don't ever let your state get taborized. If you don't know what tabor is, then you're really fortunate, but it basically constrains our state from an ability to raise revenue without going back to a public vote on literally every item that we might want to raise. So we are a state that doesn't have much in the way of money for economic development or to provide any kind of incentives. So we had to come up with creative mechanisms to go to the coalition and say, it's not just the federal money that's coming in, which in itself was quite substantial opportunity, but the state's going to come up with creative mechanisms to leverage those dollars. And I can talk more about what those look like if we have time. We also brought New Mexico in. That was very intentional. I'll talk a little bit about the good and bad in doing that. I will say the good is that they have the 30th largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, which I did not realize until we got into this effort, but it's good to have a $50 billion sovereign wealth fund if you're a state, and that's a real source of leverageable asset, if you will, for efforts like the quantum effort collectively. So making specific commitments that are tangible, that other coalition members can feel are leverageable from the state, from the cities to the degree that's possible, or from the region if you decided you wanted a more regional approach, have been pretty critical to the effort out here. I will say there are caveats. So we have a couple of big initiatives here that are regional. One is a NSF Engines effort, and the other is our Tech Hub, our quantum effort. The Engines effort includes Wyoming, and the quantum effort includes New Mexico. The downsides with the regional approach are that government positions can shift. So Wyoming is a lot less interested in the NSF Engines effort now because it focuses on clean tech. Yeah, New Mexico, on the other hand, is really interested in quantum to the point that they're looking at how they can grow that industry even apart from the Elevate Quantum Consortium. My view is that's fine, but those are consequences of an effort to try to make these initiatives more regional. We're glad we've done it on a regional basis, and there are reasons why y'all might want to think a little bit about that too, given where you are and given that there are constructs like the Greater Washington Partnership, but there are some prospective downsides over time too. The breadth and depth of the coalition have been critical to making this all work. So while higher ed has been really critical, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, the state has been critical. What will make this endure is the fact that we have, I think, about 180 institutions across Colorado and New Mexico or organizations directly and explicitly committed and involved in work streams. So the more that the work is involving people in each of these organizations, the higher the likelihood that the coalition endures. And the broader and deeper the coalition is, also the higher the likelihood. Obviously, that's tough to manage, but we have found that the probability of durability is a direct function of those attributes. A little bit on the quantum lessons, industry lessons learned. I won't spend a lot of time on this. A lot of this comes from our friends at BCG, but as you all know, and I think it's very important to have a very clear view about the pace and structure of the quantum industry, how it's going to grow over time as you grow your consortium. We've tried to be really explicit and very data-driven about that. This is just some of the data around our view of where the quantum industry is going to go. We were benefited by the fact that we had about 3,000 employees already working in quantum-related companies. We had 4 Nobel laureates in quantum, and we had a non-trivial amount of local venture money already investing in quantum at the time that we applied for the tech hub. So we had substantive aspects of the ecosystem that the Department of Commerce, I think, looked at and said, particularly on the employment front, that was a leverageable investment. But there, as you all know, there are real questions as to the pace at which the quantum industry is going to grow. How's it going to commercialize? What parts of it will commercialize most quickly, et cetera. We have a really explicit picture of that, which we developed with our consulting partners. And I think it's important to have that in order to get buy-in and in order to have your consortium understand pace, because with quantum, it's just different than a lot of other categories. Couple of other things that I will move on. Again, this talks a little bit about the value, the value-added stack for quantum. We've been explicit about where Colorado plays and where they don't play. And the good news is that, in our view, at any rate, relative to this conversation, I think this is on the next slide. Well, I will. Again, all this stuff is, by the way, totally fascinating if you're a nerd like me, but I know we don't have time to go into it. But there is a lot of really great data out there about which sectors are going to grow most quickly with respect to quantum technologies, et cetera. I don't have time to go through all that right now. I will say, and let me just jump to this next one, this is something that I would definitely counsel, which is think a lot about where Maryland wants to compete in the stack. As you'll see here, we've argued that Chicago, when it applied, and as it's going after, is kind of trying to play in all areas, but particularly in the application and compute categories. They've got a lot of R&D from R1s that they have collected as their sort of claim to quantum fame and as the reason why the big quantum companies ought to come and do business with them. We, on the other hand, EQ is the consortium out here. We're sort of lower down in the value stack. We're much more supply chain. We make refrigeration units. We have a lot of assembly-oriented kinds of companies that are supporting the quantum industry as it grows. We do have a lot of lasers and a lot of component parts that are important for. And that's been an intentional effort on our part because we don't have the strength of R1s that you folks have, quite frankly, or that Chicago has. So so for us to say, well, look, we're going to be the best quantum compute or quantum physicist researchers in the world was just not a claim that we could justify. Now, the good news, as you can see on the map, is that we think we're kind of complementary with what y'all are doing. So there's a great reason why we ought to partner, which is a separate conversation. But I think being clear about where in the stack the state can compete is really important, again, for the formation and stability of consortium. I just have a couple other things and then I'll stop because I know I'm flying through a lot here. This is kind of motherhood and apple pie. We do try to be very specific about what we're asking each of the consortium members to do. As an example, we've got about 130 folks involved in a workforce collaborative. And in that, we've got business working on KSAs. As Commissioner Agu mentioned, at the Greater Washington Partnership, we did a lot on digital skills. Industry was at the table to specify what were the knowledge, skills, and attributes needed for the digital jobs of tomorrow for the region. Similarly here, we've had industry sit down and think hard about what are the knowledge, skills, and attributes we're going to need in quantum for the next 3, 5, and 8 years. And then we've had higher ed be at the table, not just with respect to research, which is obvious, but also with respect to working with business on how to implement those KSAs in curriculum, and curriculum at all levels, pre-K, K, all the way through career. And we think that coalition, the sort of higher ed doing what it can do really well, which is specify what those curricula might look like, business helping to specify what the KSAs are, looking out 5 to 10 years. That's a really critical alignment that we think that's been very important for us to lay out what we think the educational pathways ought to be. Let me get rid of my comments here, if I can. I'll get better at this stuff. So relative to the university roles, lessons, and then I'll stop. And again, thank you for taking the time today. It's really critical if you're going to try to build this as an ecosystem that no single university rule the day. It is tempting if you've got a particularly great R1 in research and quantum to want to listen specifically to their view of how this all ought to develop. In our context, that's CU Boulder. They are, by far and away the largest R1 in the state. They have a long history in quantum. They're doing a lot in quantum. They were doing a lot in quantum even before we formed this coalition. But what's been critical out here is to provide roles and give a lot of visibility to the other R1s in particular, but really all of the educational entities. At the university level, for the four-year universities, trying to understand lanes, but mostly just encouraging everybody that we can grow together, and there will be some overlap, and that's just fine. So in our context, Colorado School of Mines is looking at an energy and minerals focused quantum cluster, faculty cluster. Dr. Ray, you'll understand how challenging that can be, particularly when you can't necessarily bring folks in from abroad. But at any rate, making sure that CU Boulder understands that that is all good for the ecosystem as we grow our efforts in quantum is part of what I think an intermediary coalition can do well, and I think is very important, because if the conversation is dominated, it's like the funding conversations for higher ed. If it's dominated by one institution, it does not grow an ecosystem. So I think that's one important lesson, and I'm happy to talk more about that. Having said that, obviously it's critical to understand what is driving the majors. What do they need? What's critical? What's the sort of sine qua non beyond which they won't participate, and making sure that gets supported. We can talk more about that as well. I mentioned the consortium between business and higher ed, and then the entire educational spectrum in building out curricula for pathways, for jobs, for quantum is a great exercise, a great way to get everyone working collectively together, and really important work to do. I'd argue it's important in every sector, but what's nice about quantum is it's kind of a fresh sheet of paper. So there isn't a lot of contention about what that needs to look like, because folks are trying to figure it out de novo. I would highly recommend structuring mechanisms to have that conversation and specify those pathways. On the right, you see something we published about 3 months ago that speaks to that. And I think that's one of the areas where this region has really led and was very appealing to the last administration in terms of workforce development. And last but not least, businesses obviously need to be at the table. We've got a lot of them. Understanding, I can move through these really, really quickly. The breadth of commitments from the private sector is non-trivial, so it has to be more than just helping financially. It's all of these things: supporting hackathons and accelerators, committing to space, developing internships and apprenticeship programs, etc. And then finally, big tech matters tremendously. So understanding, because big tech is still kind of dominating where quantum is going, so understanding how you want to be playing with which of the big tech players to get differential advantage. I'd argue Chicago's done that quite well, is an important part of the equation as well. That was a lot. I know I flew through it, but I hope it was helpful.
And Chair, I know that we are crunched for time. Let me, if there are any burning questions from our fellow commissioners, I have one that might be good, but if there are any other questions from commissioners, and Chair Mott, just keep us honest on time. Commissioner Serrano.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Like, I think it sounds like when you're trying to build the kind of innovation ecosystem, there's like a challenge of fragmentation of like different stakeholders and, who's in charge and who's leading what. On the examples that you cited about like New Mexico and Colorado and other states, like, have any of these states had like an innovation czar or like some kind of like a formal office or person that's been in charge with like being the innovation lead and to try to herd the cats here?
It's a great question, and Colorado actually had a chief innovation officer under previous administrations, but doesn't have one currently. I think you folks do have positions that are not dissimilar to that in Maryland. So I think that probably would be the place to start, I would argue, Commissioner Serrano. In the case out here, it's been mostly the economic development folks who have led the charge, both in New Mexico and in Colorado. I think the university leads have been sort of second tier in driving all of this. The benefit of having the economic development folks drive is that they actually have access to money. And so when it comes to, trying to getting the state to commit incremental funds, or CU Boulder's interest in getting state support for its quantum effort, the economic development folks have been in a good position to broker that conversation for the state.
Other questions from commissioners? And Dr. Rai.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Olson. Just very, very exciting. I can talk to you for several days. maybe not here. I know time is we are pressed. Maryland has a great position in this. 4 of our universities are very actively involved. About half of the dissertations we were looking at in computer science has a quantum computing in the title. So you can see the breadth. 4 of them, right? It's very, very good. Several PhD programs, master's programs, just in the last 18 months or so in quantum area. I think the opportunity and threat both are there. Life sciences is bread and butter for Maryland. So we see a lot of opportunities with the intersection of quantum and life sciences. A lot of opportunities, but threat also, right? I mean, AI and quantum, you can see what it can do to existing work in life sciences and how it can expedite some of the things. So we are looking at that as well. And while commerce and others, great models, they have the money. And what we are trying to do in the state of Maryland is, as we look at our state plan and other things, we want these emerging areas of our economy to be very seriously embedded throughout our plan, whether it's in IP creation, whether it's in homegrown talent development, or in upskilling. Upskilling will be important. And not just the quantum industry, but industries that will support quantum, fabrication, engineering, and other things. So we will pay very, very close attention. Again, thank you so much for your time and presentation today.
Well, I look forward to those days of talking together, Dr. Ryan. Good luck with your efforts with the electrical engineering and computer science students, as we discussed earlier.
And I think what we'll do is, if we have additional questions, I think JB, I think we'll pass them on. But first of all, I really deeply want to thank you for the time, because it's a little earlier there than it is here. I'll just say to our commissioners who are on the line, as well as people watching, we have an enormous opportunity here in the state of Maryland. One, because of just natural assets due to particularly USM, as well as a number of institutions. That's one. Secondly, unlike many other states, we have the ability through MHEC to coordinate truly across all of our segments, which is unusual, and we should take advantage of it. Third thing I'll say, and Commissioner Tabor is on the line, who knows this very deeply, whether it be quantum or semiconductor, there's a range of jobs that need to be prepared for. Obviously, you have what I call your white coats, who are your scientists and technologists who are doing the equations and doing the designing, but you also have a number of things that we historically would have called skilled trades. So JB, you mentioned refrigeration. That is key, because you need to keep these components super cool to not have decoherence. It's a little bit of quantum that I actually know within the actual quantum chip. That is not dissimilar from HVAC, just to give one example. Things like advanced packaging, making sure that you can actually transport these things in ways that make sense. That is actually not necessarily a baccalaureate skill or occupation. So this is a way, as we sit here, that we can think about how we use the entire kind of human capital stack here in Maryland in terms of institutions, but also working with our colleagues at the Department of Labor, who we're lucky here in Maryland to be working very closely with, to make sure that all the other providers of training can also be on that same page. With that, JB, thank you so much. Chair Motz, I give back the balance of time. I know we have a lot to do. Thank you all so much.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Holston. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving back to our agenda, next up we have MHEC's Director of External Relations, Derek Coley, who's going to give us a wrap up from the legislative session, which ended just a couple of weeks ago. And then, just as a reminder for those who may have jumped on late, we're going to reverse the order of the following 2 items. So we're going to have Jeff Newman and Al Dorset from the Department of Finance and Administration go next, because we have to take a vote while we still have a quorum, and we'll end with Dr. Dow's update. But first, Mr. Coley.
Good morning, everyone. How are you all this morning?
Great.
Chair Motz, Vice Chair Agu, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. I'm going to give a quick wrap up. This legislative session was very, very, very challenging. You all are very much aware of the difficult budget challenges that the Maryland General Assembly faced. There was a lot of policy discussions separate and aside from higher education in and of itself with respect to closing the budget shortfalls and the gap across the state of Maryland. As a result, there were a number of higher education bills that simply did not favor the General Assembly in terms of the time allotted for policy discussions, with so much being focused on the General Assembly's budget and the policy discussions surrounding closing the budget shortfall. This legislative session, we did have a priority bill for the Higher Education Commission, as you all are aware, House Bill 762. That bill did not pass. However, our agency will continue, as Vice Chair Agu and Deputy Secretary Elena discuss. We will continue as an agency developing the Maryland State Plan for Higher Education with a targeted deadline for December 2025 of this year. You all were also made aware last year, House Bill 1244, Academic Program Approval Bill. There was a slight discrepancy in the conference committee report regarding this bill. And as a result, between the House and the Senate conference committees, there was a corrective bill this year, Senate Bill 9. This bill did pass, which looked at the letter of intent and also proposing the implementation of certain academic programs for various institutions across the state. House Bill 479, companion bill, with Senate Bill 09, which is corrective bill to the Academic Approval Bill 1244 from last session. There was a letter from both Chair Feldman and also Chair Barnes last April indicating the discrepancy regarding the final bill that was passed. And again, this bill was a corrective bill to make sure those both conferences were in agreement moving forward with respect to our regulations on academic approval and the actual process. And Dr. Dow and her team are moving forward on that as well. Moving forward, there was also a legislative victory with respect to the Maryland Promise Scholarship. Senate Bill 269, House Bill 473, the companion bill. This will allow part-time students at Maryland's community colleges to actually access the Promise funding. And it will allow them to have 6 years towards their associate's degree completion. More above and beyond with respect to apprenticeship programs, this Promise Scholarship bill also provided a technical amendment for those institutions to allow students in HVAC, other plumbing, electrical, and other types of trades to also access the Promise Scholarship as well. So that's a huge victory for those types of apprenticeship programs at community colleges in the state of Maryland. Also, there was a bill focused on osteopathic medicine from our colleagues out in Western Maryland, MSOM, the Meredith School of Osteopathic Medicine. This bill, House Bill 704, companion bill, Senate Bill 597, looked at expanding the graduate and professional scholarship program that MHEC administers to that institution and their applicants who were attending medical school. We were very much in support of this expansion for these scholarship funds in order to address the workforce need of medical doctors in Western Maryland with the aging population in that region of our state. Additionally, there was a bill I want to bring to you all's attention as well, which looked at the Maryland Cyber Council. There would be 9 representatives from institutions of higher education, which would be a part of the Maryland Cybersecurity Council. You just heard the discussion regarding the Maryland plan as well, looking at this unique area within our state to make sure there is a comprehensive and coordinated plan going forward. Again, that was House Bill 376 and Senate Bill, the companion bill, Senate Bill 294 also passed. And again, there is representation regarding institutions for higher education on the Maryland Cybersecurity Council. This is just an FYI bill as well. House Bill 744 allowed MICUA private institutions to be designated as hunger-free campuses. In fact, allowing them to access additional funding for their hunger-free campus programs, again, in the private institutions across the state of Maryland as well. Another bill which is looking at those individuals who are pregnant or parenting. Was House Bill 840 or Senate Bill 511. This bill also passed, which looks at requiring institutions of higher education to develop plans for those those students who are in fact parents or pregnant attending their institutions. Again, this is the bill that will look at wraparound services to ensure that students are not only retained, but also have services that are made available to them in order for them to graduate and to become successful towards degree completion. There was a bill regarding the Janet Hoffman Loan Assistance Repayment Program, which is administered by MHEC as well, which looks at those individuals who graduate from veterinary schools who are providing volunteer services to veterinary clinics. As you all know, there is a growing population of cats and dogs and other animals within the state. There is also a shortage of veterinarians as well. And so this is critical with respect to those individuals who do have pets and also farm animals as well, looking at providing a financial incentive for them to provide free veterinary clinic services in order to have loan repayment towards their college degree as veterinary doctors. And again, this bill passed. That was House Bill 643 and Senate Bill 318. The next bill, the College Park Chirp Succeed program, also passed, which is actually a pilot study and funding bill. Look, this House Bill 458, Senate Bill 603. This bill I want to bring to you all's attention because looking forward on the next slide, I'll discuss this in depth with the forward view of the Maryland General Assembly for 2026. This is a pilot program looking at helping students with disabilities at the University of Maryland College Park to make sure that they have acute attention in terms of making sure they have the services that are provided for them to ensure that their individual education plans are fulfilled and that they also graduate as well. Legislative outlook for 2026, and I'll close with this. The Maryland General Assembly is very much focused, and I've shared this with the segments on government relations professionals, very much focused on students with chronic illnesses and also disabilities as well. There were a number of bills that looked at those individual populations or unique populations of students with chronic illnesses and also disabilities to make sure that they had full equity access to higher education in the state of Maryland. In fact, one of the legislative priorities for the Maryland Black Caucus was the sickle cell anemia bill that did not pass. However, we suspect these bills will come back again in the very near future. In fact, there was a joint briefing. Dr. Dow assembled a team of other institutions, MICUA and also USM, to discuss what they were currently doing on their campuses. The joint briefing was conducted with EEE and HTO. And during this briefing, again, this was looking at a recommendation report that we had, in fact, published 2 years ago to determine what we have been doing across the state of Maryland at our institutions to address these unique populations to ensure that these students achieve academic success. And again, I just want to point this out that I suspect very strongly that these types of bills will continue to move forward regarding the protection and support for students with chronic illnesses and also disabilities. Another area that the General Assembly is very much interested in, as you all may be aware, is leveraging the entrepreneurial spirit, but also the industry engagement of our campuses across the state of Maryland. There was a bill looking at a unique economic development fund. And in fact, this bill, House Bill 799, expanded that fund to include all institutions across the state of Maryland to leverage these types of monies to have transformative impact regarding research and also small businesses on their campuses with respect to faculty who are engaged as well. Last but not least, House Bill 1222 was discussed earlier with respect to protecting those students who are immigrants, and I will end there. Again, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners for the opportunity, and Secretary as well. Are there any questions? Please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Coley. Any questions? And if you don't mind, Mr. Coley, if you could, well, actually, looks like we have a couple questions. Commissioner Serrano and then Commissioner Agu.
Yeah, just on the last one that you mentioned, the Maryland Values Act. So from my understanding that it is based on I've always interpreted it as like 287G, that, you know, the counties, basically what we're at now in terms of 287G is kind of stopping the proliferation of 287G counties. How would that tie into higher ed?
Well, in terms of House Bill 1222, Commissioner Serrano?
Yeah, the Maryland
Oh.
ISAC. Yeah.
Yes, that looks at making sure that ICE and other federal agencies, institutions of higher education, if you can recall, will be classified as a safe place. If a student is here on a visa, achieving an education, they should be allowed, after that visa has been granted, to continue their educational studies. And so 1222 impacts higher education based on the fact that it is part of that safe space, similar to K-12 public schools as well, Commissioner Serrano.
So is it, because the bill basically says, these are sensitive locations? Because
Yes,
so
sir.
okay. Because
Yes,
I thought the language was different. I thought it was more about 287G of counties collaborating with ICE as opposed to, no, here. But okay, I'll look through the bill again because I'm confused of what that.
It's primarily safe places and sensitive locations, Commissioner Serrano. Yes, sir. Making sure those areas are defined clearly in Maryland statute in terms of making sure those individuals are protected.
Great. Commissioner Agu?
Good morning, Mr. Coley. Quick question, and it's probably an unfair one. We're hoping to not have another session fiscally like we had this year, obviously, with all the pressures. When will we have an idea of, and this is just for those of us who are not as deep in Annapolis, fiscal outlook for kind of the upcoming fiscal year? When does that become available, so that we can have an idea of what the 26 session might look like? I know the 25 session just ended, but my mind is going to what's happening next.
Vice Chair, I will get back to you, but the Spending Affordability Committee will be meeting probably, I want to say May, to do another fiscal outlook, and I'll track the exact date down for you, and that way the Comptroller and Treasurer can give us another read on tax revenue and where we are in the state as well with the forward outlook. I'll get the exact date to you, sir.
That's really helpful, and when that comes out, it would I think be helpful for commissioners just to get a sense of what, just some forecasting for us for what a session may look like. I think it's for my fellow commissioners. The one thing we cannot control is what happens in DC, and just to give one data point, Moody's, as well as I think a number of other credit bureaus, they labeled Maryland as #1 most economically exposed to risk of what is happening in Washington DC in terms of contraction of the federal government.
And so employees.
Yeah, employees, so on and so forth. So that's just one thing that no one can control, but I think it's something that we can plan, at least forecast, and be prepared is super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Coley.
Thank you, thank you, Chair Mons.
If you don't mind returning the screen to the
Yes, ma'am.
gallery of faces. Thank you, sir. So we're now going to switch the order a little bit and go straight to Mr. Newman and Mr. Dorsett. Mr. Newman, the floor is yours. If you're on. If not, we'll go right to Mr. Dorsett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Secretary Rye. I am going to actually hand it over to Al Dorsett first to do his item, and then I will do mine on the budget actions so that you can get the action item out of the way. So, Al?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Gu, Commissioners, Dr. Rye, thank you for giving us the time. The first piece is a requested approval of proposed amendments to COMAR 13B 0820, which is the Cybersecurity Public Service Scholarship. I believe it is on page 14 of your commission book, and the changes of legislation are 15 and down. During the 2022 legislative session, changes were made to the Cybersecurity Public Service Scholarship Program in Chapter 209 HB 24. The legislative changes expanded eligibility for the scholarship beginning with the 23-24 program application period to include part-time students as eligible to apply for the program, as well as expanding the years of eligibility for up to 6 years for students enrolled part-time. Under the current regulations, part-time applicants were excluded, and undergraduate students are considered full-time if they enroll in at least 12 credits. Graduate students are considered full-time if they enroll at least 9 credits. The proposed regulations have been updated to include program eligibility for part-time applicants, update the definition for both full-time and part-time enrollment for both undergraduate and graduate students, and expand the maximum time frame a part-time student may be eligible for award. A copy of the enacted bill is enclosed for your reference. The proposed amendments have been approved for legality by MHEC's Assistant Attorney as required by the Maryland Administrative Procedure Act and are now closed for your review and approval. Upon your approval, proposed regulations and regulatory amendments are submitted to the Legislators' Joint Committee for Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review, after which they are submitted to the Division of State Documents for publication in the Maryland Register. After publication or after public comment period, they may be brought back before the Commission for final approval. So it is recommended, one, that the Commission approve the publication in the Maryland Register that includes proposed regulatory amendments to the Cybersecurity Public Scholarship Program, and 2, authorize its Assistant Attorney General to make a non-substantive edits to the proposed regulations to conform to the stylistic and formatting requirements of AELR and DSD. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorset. Before we ask for a motion, are there any questions? All right, do we have a motion consistent with Mr. Dorset's 2 recommendations?
Madam Chair, I so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposition or abstentions? All right, it's unanimously approved. Thank you, Mr. Dorset. I also believe you had a couple of other updates for us, sir.
Yes, just pulling up my presentation real quick now for you. Can you all see my presentation?
Yes, although it's not in the presentation mode yet. I don't know. I know this has been a challenge this morning. There, yes, good.
Okay, so just starting with some updates on Promise. HB 923 passed during the 23 legislative session, expanded eligibility for part-time students to centralized programs. HB 607 passed during 24 legislative session, altered the requirements of the scholarship application process for applicants enrolled in the non-credit vocational certificate program, a sequence of non-credit courses leading to licensure or certification in a registered apprenticeship program. SB 269 passed during the 25 legislative session that altered the number of years that a recipient of an award may hold the award under certain circumstances. So with all this, Promise has expanded. Unfortunately, in this past fiscal 25 budget, the Promise award or the allocation was decreased by 1.5 million, reducing it from 15 million to 13.5 million. We've identified the institutions that they can return 10% of their FY25 allocation, are working with those institutions to return those funds. Additionally, we are enhancing the Maryland College Aid Processing System to include summer awards so that institutions may award students for summer and working out that reconciliation process so that we can have a full idea or focus on how much money will be spent by the end of the fiscal year. As of April 21st, 2025, community colleges have so far reported in MDCAPS 3,030 students awarded for a total of $7,748,767. That is only what is in MDCAP. So institutions have identified that they've reported more, and we are working with institutions that are having certain or experiencing any issues with reporting so they can report and get those numbers up to date to match what they have within their own systems. Moving forward to the Howard P. Rawlings Educational Excellence Awards Program, fiscal 26 funding increased to $138,664,752, which is $114 $1,240,000 general funds and $24,424,752 has been approved to be transferred from the need-based student financial assistance fund. The maximum guaranteed access grant for fiscal 25 is going to be $18,000 for both initial and renewal students based off the approved funding as well as the number of students that we project will be awarded. MHIC is in the final phase of completing testing and are looking to award as soon as possible. As many of you may know, with the what was expected initially that the program was going to be transitioned over to the colleges for them to award the guaranteed access grant as a decentralized program. However, that was pushed back, so more time was needed to basically reboot the MDCAP system with all the different rules and awarding processes, which we're pushing hard to make sure that we complete so that we can award as early as possible, projecting early May.
Mr. Dorsett, will you do some sort of notification beyond just to the students, like to the universities, colleges, and nonprofits that work with students to let them know that GA awarding has begun?
Yes, we will start doing that once we're ready to start moving with the current MDCAP system. Unfortunately, we will have to take the system down for a week like we've done in the past years, just to make sure that we can do a smooth awarding on that initial big award. But we'll also make sure that definitely by, if not the end of this week, next week, we will do a big communication to them.
Great.
And
And just so we understand the timing, will the system go down just before that first batch of big awards or during it?
Yes, it'll, and so we'll do a communication to the institutions as well. This is what we're working with the vendor and preparing on now so that we can time that communication the correct way so that when we go down, we have enough time and we don't have to go down several times like we had to in the past. But we'll do that communication out to the institutions, letting them know that the system is going down, as well as letting them know that when awarding will begin.
I see. So the system will go down for a week or so, and then after that, awarding will happen.
Well, when the system's down is when we will be awarding.
Okay. Understood.
So
So
the
awards
system-
will happen while the system is down, and you'll make that.
Correct. And then we'll communicate that the system's back up and that we've done our initial awarding for students.
All right. And you're projecting early May.
Yes.
And I understand you, I think it bears repeating. This is because initially the plan was for the universities to take over, to do decentralized awarding. And then MPEC was asked to take it back centrally, but we'd already gone down the path of proactively pushing the system, the technology to the university. So we had to change things, bring it back to do it centrally, and we lost a little time there, which is why it's a little bit later than we might like.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? I before we get to FAFSA tracking.
No, I guess I really appreciate your comment and clarification, Chair Martz, because from this year, the scholarship program was supposed to be decentralized. And universities and colleges were supposed to give money directly to students. So keeping that in mind, our own MDCAP system, our ASFA team reconfigured the system, assuming that universities will award this scholarship. And universities told us earlier in this year that for all kind of reasons, they are not able to do that for this year. Once they said that, now we had to go back and reconfigure the system. So
Right.
That's why there is a month of delay, but
Right.
very,
And-
very
and
thankful.
I think it was all in good faith. We're all trying to be good partners. I think MHEC has made a lot of strides in customer service and in Mr. Dorsett's shop in particular in financial assistance. So I just want our community members to understand why this delay is happening, because we had gone down the road of proactively planning, and now we're being good partners and going back and continuing to do it centrally, but we need to reprogram.
That's very, very helpful. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure. Okay, Mr. Dorsett, please continue.
Thank you. So just the last slide on FAFSA tracking, just to give a comparison between the FAFSA cycle from prior years to this year. Looking at the slideshow, it shows that in 22-23, at this time in April, this is specifically for April within every year to do a true comparison, we were about 45.8%. For 23-24, we were at 48.7%. As many of you know, during the 24-25 FAFSA cycle, which we're currently in the 24-25 award year still, we went down 34.3%, really because of the issues faced with the FAFSA and the federal government. As you see, the 25-26 FAFSA cycle up through April 11th, 2025, we're at 47.1% of high school students with the class of 2025 in Maryland that have completed a FAFSA. So we're moving at a decent projection, moving back to where we were. We've been working with the Maryland Department of Education to promote FAFSA completion, to help different high schools understand how they can better promote FAFSA completion, as well as starting even early now with meetings on how we prepare for next year. The goal is still to get students to complete the FAFSA because they still have time to complete the FAFSA for the upcoming year and still receive federal grants and make different decisions and choices. So the campaign is really twofold, still pushing for the current or the upcoming 25-26 year, but also preparing for the 26-27 year to start out as early as possible to really push so that we can really increase those.
Quick question, Mr. Dorsett. I know the FAFSA, of course, is a federal program, and there have been layoffs and less people working in Washington at the relevant department, the Department of Education, and that there also were talks of moving not FAFSA, but some of the loans over to the Small Business Administration. I guess my immediate question is, in the wake of having fewer people working at the U.S. Department of Education, answering students' questions, helping to process FAFSA, have we seen implications for our Maryland students in their ability to properly fill out their FAFSAs?
So we haven't seen that yet. I mean, when the initial layoff came, there was a pause, I think, for about 2 days where the FAFSA was not accessible to students, and then they got that accessibility right back up. We haven't heard too many complaints from students indicating that they haven't been able to do the FAFSA. And as it was talked about earlier in the commission meeting, the SAGE mailbox is real key. So the federal government recently, about 3 weeks ago, gave us access that we could actually retrieve FAFSAs for students for 24-25 that we had never received their FAFSA for. And we are working with the federal government for records that we even requested that we still did not receive. But additionally, they've also opened up for 25-26. So even when you look at our numbers and what FAFSAs we have, we're still pushing to make sure that we've received every FAFSA from a student that has identified that they've completed a FAFSA, and that's been our push right there. The biggest thing that we've seen so far is we've had a few students that have reached out to us indicating that they completed their FAFSA. We don't have a receipt of it, so we've been pushing to get those records and work with the Department of Ed to say, hey, the student said they completed the FAFSA, they showed proof, why wasn't it imported over to us?
All right, if there are no other questions, please continue. Or was that it?
That is it.
Okay, great. Any questions, colleagues? All right, well, Mr. Dorsett, thank you to you and Mr. Newman and your whole team. I know it's a very busy time of year for you, and only going to be getting busier as you shut down your system and make your first tranche of awards. And as someone who works with high school students applying to college every day, we really appreciate your efforts. Your team is always incredibly accessible. Mr. Dorsett personally answers individual student questions, and we really appreciate your team's work.
Well, thank you for the commission, and Dr. Rod, thank you for your support as well.
Right. Mr. Newman, I think the floor is
Yes.
yours to talk about the budget.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to take a brief amount of time and just show you the highlights of what actions the General Assembly took with respect to what's in the MHEC budget for fiscal 25 and 26. You'll see this on pages 7 through 10 in your commission books. As Al Dorset mentioned, the General Assembly reduced the Promise Scholarship in fiscal 2025 by $1.5 million. This was a reduced reduction. The original reduction being considered was a $5 million reduction that was lowered to only $1.5 million for fiscal 2025. The Teaching Fellows from Maryland program was reduced by $4 million, leaving $14 million for the program for fiscal 25. The Teacher Development and Retention program was reduced by $8 million, leaving $2 million for fiscal 2025. And the Maryland Loan Assistance Repayment program for police officers was and the Police Officer Scholarship program was also reduced by $4.5 million, leaving $500,000 in each of those two programs for fiscal 2025.
Mr. Newman, if I could just interrupt for a second. A lot of these reductions are because there were surpluses in the funds, right? This is not a policy choice to reduce the number of students who can get these. It's just the money wasn't being spent, and we're having a fiscal crisis, so that this was reallocated to other areas. For example, increasing the budget for the Guaranteed Access Grant, which ran out of money at one point last year, right? So it's just reshuffling the financial aid money to where more students are applying.
Yeah, the justification for these reductions was to make the programs align more with what we've experienced so far this fiscal year.
Exactly. I think that's probably well understood by our colleagues on this call, but I do think it's worth stating kind of the big picture why, because I wouldn't want anyone to think that the administration wasn't prioritizing these very important scholarships.
Correct.
And
Okay.
I will also add, Chairman, thank you for that clarification. Still, the budgeted amount is higher than what has been used over the last several years.
Exactly.
So like Promises Scholarship, $15 million. Every year, about $8 million were not used. So only 1.5 million has been reduced. And one of the reasons was the Promises Scholarship criteria was written in a way that community college students were not eligible. And like part-time students, well, community college students are part-time, not full-time. So we have changed all that. And in summer, a lot of community college students take classes in summer. So because of our MD cap system, we were not able to award in summer. We're changing that. And most importantly, non-credit students on welding program and other heating, air conditioning programs, those students are also now able to use Promise Scholarship. So we expect that use will go up. But again, all these reductions, even after these reductions, we have sufficient amount of money to award students who need these scholarships. And about $24 million increase in guaranteed access scholarships.
Exactly. During a very tough budget year. It was still
and community colleges got an increase of 5.1% in their CATE formula this year. So higher education, scholarship, everything has been very, very well supported this year.
Great. Sorry, Mr. Newman, to interrupt.
Oh,
please go.
No problem. Thank you for the clarification and the assistance. Just to give you an idea, the deliberations in the Budget and Taxation Committee this year, the Budget and Reconciliation Financing actions took about 2 hours in the decision meeting in Budget and Tax. So there was quite a bit of actions in that bill. So it was a very busy year for the budget. But for fiscal 2026, MHEC received $13.1 million for the general administration for the agency. We also received 1 additional assistant attorney general and a staff specialist 1 for the Next Generation Scholars Program. The Joseph A. Sellinger program received $73.3 million, but not before there was a recommendation at the budget hearing to reduce that program in half to $36.7 million and redo how the money is allocated to the institutions by having them prove that they were more financially needy than other institutions in the bill through a grant program through MHEC. That recommendation was not accepted by the budget committee, so the Sellinger program will be getting the $73.3 million. The John A. Cade program provides $4.5 million to the community colleges. The retirement benefits for the community colleges, there was an action to require counties through the aid to local government portion of our budget to provide an additional share to the retirement programs for local employees. So the retirement benefits for the community colleges was reduced by $9.8 million for 2026 in alignment with this new policy. As Al Dorset mentioned earlier, the Howard P. Rawlings Educational Excellence Assistance Program receives $138.7 million. That's the largest appropriation or allowance that's ever been provided to this program in its history. So that shows you the commitment to this program in these fiscal times. Again, the Promise Scholarship was reduced by $1.5 million for fiscal 26 as well as 25. The Teaching Fellows for Maryland program was reduced by $4 million, leaving $14 million out of the $18 million for that program. Please take your pens and wipe out that line following it about the Teacher Development and Retention Program. In my zeal to try to provide every action that occurred in the General Assembly, I inadvertently put this in there and it's incorrect. So please just cross that out. The Maryland's Loan Assistance Payment Program and the Maryland Scholarships Program for fiscal 2026 were reduced by $3 million, leaving $2 million in each program. And finally, the General Assembly the budget lowered the cap on the Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit, which is not an appropriation. It's a reduction in revenue collection because we provide tax credits to people. But it was reduced from 18 million to 9 million for fiscal 2026. In addition to the budget actions, the General Assembly added several requests for reporting from MHEC, and these are all due in December. One is the impact of credit completion requirement on financial aid awards. This is a program that we've been doing annually, so we're prepared to provide this information for the upcoming year. There's a report requested on the post-secondary outcomes for the Next Generation Scholars Program. There was also a request to provide detailing of number of renew and renewal awards for the Educational Excellence Award Program details, because over this past year and moving into this new fiscal year, there's been a lot of concern because the Guaranteed Access Grant is taking the lion's share of the funding for these two programs. So there has been much less funding provided to the Educational Assistance Grant than in prior years. So the General Assembly wants to try to understand what is happening. So they're asking for detailed reporting on that. There's another request for information on the Guaranteed Access Grant and individuals in informal kinship care. And then finally, there's a request to provide all of the outreach we're doing to promote the police officers and probation agent programs, scholarship programs, and loan assistance repayment program. And that's for your information. And I'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive report. Any questions from my colleagues? All right, thank you, Mr. Newman.
Thank you.
Our final agenda item, Dr. Emily Dow, who's going to give us an update on the blueprint for Maryland's future with a particular emphasis on implications for higher education and MHEC.
Great. Good morning. 6 minutes away from a good afternoon, but good morning, Chair Motz and commissioners. I'm going to give you a brief presentation about where we are with blueprint implementation. And just give you a summary of next steps. I have a handful of slides, hope to get through this in the next 5-10 minutes. Just as a reminder, as background, we provided an initial implementation plan in 2023, and that plan was approved. We were expected to prepare another implementation plan for 2024 to 2027. We did that. We submitted it by the deadline in August. We received feedback in November. We made revisions between December and February. And I'm pleased to share that the Accountability and Implementation Board, AIB, approved our plan just this past March. So very exciting and glad to have kind of that box checked. It is quite a detailed plan. It is up on their website, and I'm happy to share that with you if you have trouble navigating their website. It provides a number of milestones, a variety of initiatives that we need to work on over the next 3 years, and expectations about how we might make some policy changes or monitor a variety of initiatives. I do want to highlight, we, MHEC, have our own implementation plan, along with all the LEAs. A couple of other state agencies require an implementation plan, but we are also required to provide a joint implementation plan between MHEC and MSDE, specifically on supporting teacher preparation programs. That plan has been submitted. It is currently under review. I think we are expecting some additional feedback from AIB in the coming weeks, and we will work to make revisions in tandem with MSDE on that joint plan. So I just want to be clear, there is an MHEC specific plan, and then there is a second joint plan with MSDE just specifically on teacher preparation. MSDE has their own plan for a variety of initiatives that they need to oversee related to Blueprint. So some thematic initiatives, without getting too much in the weeds, I would organize the things that we need to do into 3 categories. Just general impact analysis. So we want to be able to collect data, measure metrics around student participation in various relevant programs. So things like scholarships, as well as in enrollment and participation in teacher preparation programs. We want to look at the impact of dual enrollment, and more specifically, the recent dual enrollment payment policy that MSDE released last year. We want to also kind of keep tabs on what's happening with the college and career readiness standards. So these are just some impact analysis and policy adjustments as we review and continue to observe what's happening regarding Blueprint relevant policies. Second, we certainly need to do some communication and awareness initiatives, certainly around our scholarships related to teacher preparation, as well as our LARP. We have a loan assistant repayment program that allows students to receive loan assistant repayment if they are teaching in certain specific schools. The good thing is we have these great best practices. We do know that people just sometimes don't know about them. So that's why we've got to level up our communication and awareness around these initiatives. So what that means is certainly, targeting students, making sure that when students are enrolling in our academic programs, when they're graduating from our academic program, they know that these opportunities exist. On top of that, working with some unique partners that we probably haven't engaged with historically. So the LEAs around hiring practices, so that when they do hire a recent graduate, they can inform them about the LARP. And then certainly our unions to communicate out to their constituents as these opportunities evolve and expand. So impact analysis, communication and awareness, and finally, just a broader initiative around teacher workforce pipeline. So thinking through our Associate of Arts in Teaching Pathways, the AAT, thinking about alternative pathways. And so again, I want to shine a light on our Deputy Secretary's work around Feds to Eds. That is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about alternative pathways, and then certainly apprenticeship pathways. What's also important is early childhood educators kind of get a special shout out because their pathways are slightly different than traditional K through 12 educators. And so we want to be thoughtful about what those workforce pipelines look like for our early childhood educators as well. So that's highlights of the thematic initiatives. Some key programs, things that as commissioners you have heard us talk about, and you just heard our Assistant Secretary for Finance and Administration talk about the Maryland Teaching Fellow Scholarship and recent funding shifts. You heard, again, our Deputy Secretary talk about the Teacher Quality and Diversity Grant and that we just released an RFP for that. You just heard me talk about the loan assistant repayment programs. And then finally, our Teacher Development and Retention Program. As a reminder, this is unique funds specific to stipends to spark interest and support student teachers through internships in high needs areas. So that's kind of a unique funding stream that was implemented maybe about 2 years ago. So these are some key programs that our agency oversees and that we are responsible for overseeing and initiating and fulfilling. 2 more slides, some immediate and forthcoming work. So certainly a focus on alternative certification programs, both for career changers and paraprofessionals. Again, this is just a reflection of our most immediate task led by our Deputy Secretary around Feds to Eds. But as well, I also want to highlight some very real conversations about teacher apprenticeship opportunities. And we've got I believe two teacher apprenticeship programs, certainly one, and possibly just one recently approved or in the pipeline to be approved as a teacher apprenticeship program. Again, targeted outreach and communication campaign and working with the right partners to make sure that, this isn't just posting something to Twitter. It's about having conversations and figuring out the words we need to say to the right actors to get this information out. Reviewing relevant metrics. So again, student participation in specific programs, uptake of scholarships. So data collection and reviewing that data for the purposes of implementation. And then finally, coordinating with new partners that we haven't typically engaged with, unions, LEAs. We obviously engage with community colleges all the time, but in the context of teacher preparation, they're kind of a new partner for us to be thinking about when we talk about alternative pathways, and of course, our apprenticeship leaders. Finally, I just want to highlight our engagement on this, how often we're meeting and talking. We have several standing meetings that happen once a month, once every semester on a regular basis. So the education deans and directors meet regularly. Not only do they meet themselves, but they also meet with MSDE, and we are often invited and or participate directly in those meetings. We, of course, have an AAT oversight committee that meets regularly. There's an early childhood education career ladder work group that is re-engaged in this work. And then finally, there has been an ongoing initiative around math pathways that's very relevant to the CCR standard and making sure that our students are college ready while also expanding math exposure in high school. Additionally, we have a number of specialized meetings that are forthcoming. We are intending to engage with the LEAs and community colleges, ideally over the summer months, to talk about 11th grade and 12th grade support for students who don't meet that college and career readiness standard in 10th grade. There's an expectation that community colleges are supposed to be providing technical support, if not teaching exact classes, to get students to be college and career ready by the time they graduate high school. We have seen lots of variability in that collaboration between LEAs and community colleges. Some LEAs are like, yes, we have a great partnership with our community colleges. And in some instances, it seems like there needs to be some support and identifying the resources to be able to expand those opportunities. Additionally, some recent conversations around career pathways between MSDE and our Governor's Workforce Development Board. That is another expectation that the agency participates and provides input on developing career pathways for high school students. And then finally, again, back to this LARP. I cannot say LARP enough. That's part of my communication campaign right now, that we have a LARP for teachers. But again, we need to be talking with LEAs and unions to make sure they know about it, so that when they are hiring professionals that may be eligible for these opportunities, they can take advantage of it. Those are the big highlights. Again, I'm happy to share the version of our implementation plan. It is available up on AIB's website, and this is more of a summary, and I will end my remarks there. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm happy
Dr.
to answer questions.
Any questions? All right. Well, I believe we've come to the end of our agenda. Our next meeting, I have been told, will include a review hearing. And I'm told that we will get the materials today, that there's a certain timeline. So I would like to make a pitch for in-person attendance at our next meeting, which is Wednesday, May 28th, at the agency's new location in downtown Baltimore at 217 Redwood Street. Is that right, Dr. Rye? Yes. There will be a hybrid option for commissioners, but the parties, the two universities at issue, will be required to be in person. And I strongly urge all commissioners who are able to attend in person. I think you lose a lot hybrid, just interpersonally, technology-wise. So if you could make an effort to come in person, I'd really appreciate it. Anything else, Dr. Rye? No?
Thank you very much. Great meeting, great conversations, and we are making progress. We are supporting our students.
Excellent. I agree. It's challenging times, but I think that the state is really working well together, and our agency is certainly doing its part. So thank you to everyone on the MPEC team. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. I
Aye.
assume there's no opposition or abstentions. All right. The ayes have it. Have an hour of your day back, everybody, and enjoy this spring weather. See you in May, hopefully in person, May 28th. Bye-bye.
Right.